Hello, everyone. How is everyone doing on this fine Wednesday, hump day? I hope everyone is great. All right, so there's lots of stuff put in by Sterling. Thank you very much for all the news. Good morning, Patrick. Did I miss Sterling's good morning? Everything gets jumbled. Everything is jumbled. That's why I can't go through it in order, Sterling. It's all over the place in here. I don't know why Ecamm does that. Good morning, John. Let's see. Again, the earnings are mixed in. I know you put that up first. Uh, where else? I'm just trying. There it is. Good morning, Sterling. There we go. There we go. Good morning, Bull Strike Cheetah. Good morning, Tony. Good morning, Jacob. What else? Good morning, Ted. Good morning, PMG. There is a lot going on. If you want to know everything, Sterling put in a bunch of stuff on the news and some key earnings and stuff like Kraft Heinz investing $3 billion upgrading its 30 US factories. A lot of this stuff is going to be done anyways by companies. It's just now being promoted. So again, you're going to get everything pumping out the good news. Good morning, Anissa. So let's take a look at the markets. We got Fed's Waller was speaking. We got Jefferson speaking coming up, but this is a very quiet day. Then we got daily after the close today, and we have the EIA numbers. Other than that, I mean, a slight uptick in the mortgage rates, hanging in there close still in the upper 6%, but nothing much. Tomorrow, remember, we got PPI, we got jobless claims, we got Philly Fed, and we got retail sales. Tomorrow morning is busy. And then Friday we got the consumer sentiment. So as I've been talking before, everything's backloaded this week. Hello, Charles. The Nvidia is still up on the chip news from the Middle East. Tesla is rallying for who knows why. Although I'm still looking for that 50% retracement target. Healthcare plans are bouncing. Apple and Microsoft down a bit. Microsoft announcing big layoffs coming up. I think it was like 3% of their workforce. So that's where we sit right there. Groups, healthcare, technology, consumer, cyclical leading. Let me just do a quick refresh. Yep, those still leading. Income services, basic materials and energy. Basic materials, gold is could trigger a massive double top pattern today. It's actually confirmed it as we speak. Not officially triggered it yet. Fed watch still has two rate cuts priced in, but we're on pause. At least the market's looking now for a pause until September. Fear and greed. Upper into greed. Will we make it all the way to extreme greed? How can market momentum be extreme fear? This has been on a momentum terror. Otherwise, we'd already been in extreme greed. I mean, stock price breadth, extreme greed, put call options greed, safe haven demand, extreme greed, junk bond demand, extreme greed. I mean, everything's being priced in and by the president saying buy stocks. 36.63 on this not cheap market. Good morning, Heinrich. Good morning. Hello, Charles. In terms of earnings, not much this morning. Not even much to cover. I didn't even bother looking at Sony. After close, Cisco. But again, nothing that's going to be market moving. Going to keep an eye on Cisco because I always watch that one. It's got a soft spot in my heart back from .com days. Alibaba and Walmart tomorrow morning, and John Deere. So tomorrow morning, along with all the other releases, Walmart especially can definitely have an impact on the market. Then Applied Materials after the close. Other than that, we're still grinding up on daily cycles. We're in extremely overbought conditions again. On any bigger drop, not necessarily today unless something comes out blindsides the market, but the major support, even before we have a gap left behind, but the major support right now is right around just above this key open. 57.65 to about 57.90 is the major support area on any pullback, not just for today. Okay? The minor pullback area I'm keeping an eye on, little area right at this top of the rotation zone. If we start breaking below the 4-hour rotation zone, we're looking at about 58.67 and then 58.35 for key support areas for another rotation back up. At least through, I'm still watching daily cycles down here at the bottom. Daily cycles still heading up. Weekly cycles still at the top. So we're going to get to a top. The real question is, do we hit 6,000, which is the 87.5 harmonic, technically 599.75? Do we hit that before we roll over or not? Intermediate target I'm still using is 59.48, so right around 59.50. That's it. That's it. I mean, there's no short pattern here. It's just pullback patterns so far. Again, yesterday continued the rally. Today, sort of hitting some minor resistance, but we'll have to see after the open. Good morning, Harold. Did I short Cisco? I did a lot of option plays to the downside. Let's put it that way. I did not do the stock. It was all structured with options play. I prefer short setups with options, personally, especially stuff that's starting to just crater. Do not because you can get some pretty nasty short squeezes. It's actually easier to manage the position in the options because you can modify. You can modify your options positions. So 21,231 was the next key target. We closed just above there yesterday on the NASDAQ. Again, cycles getting to the top area, very overbought. And on the weekly getting to the top area, the key is, do we hit 21,680 beforehand and check off that rule? Same thing. Keeping an eye, if we start breaking below the 4-hour rotation zone, I only have one key area because we're going into a clear path here. My one key area is just above the bottom of the rotation zone, just about 20,975 to 2,100. That's, if we did break down, that's my key area I'd be watching for support. Other than that, going to be going in. Today we could end up a little choppier with a slight upward bias. I would not be shorting anything aggressively. I would be looking for pullbacks. That's me personally. So, you do know Mike? Oh boy. The Dow. We got a little bounce in UNH going on. That's why the Dow was down yesterday. Going to be, watch the bottom of the 4-hour rotation zone. Dow's done its pullback or its 4-hour cycle bottoms. So we're not, even if the S&P and NASDAQ do a little pause to pull back, we could actually see a little bounce move into the Dow today. By the way, if you're looking for the next key area, if we do continue a pullback, the major support I'm looking at is 41,850 area. That's key support for me over the next couple days. Again, Dow is sort of cycles are flat at the top and up there on the weekly. So, and the Dow is trading against a very key breakdown area, the prior breakdown area. So we're against some key resistance. So that's what I'm keeping an eye on here, but would not be surprised to see a minor rotation. The Russell stalling out at their key harmonic over the last 2 days, the harmonic and the prior top area. The Russell is, again, I'm looking first and foremost at the S&P and NASDAQ. No, we do not have a double top, just grinding along. If we start breaking down below the 4-hour rotation zone, I'm watching closer to this lows from Monday. The lows from Monday with the bottom of the 4-hour rotation zone closer to 2085. All right. With this, if we do have a pausing bar, so we can now raise this because yesterday did not exceed the daily high. So we're coming still from the lows, from the capitulation bottom lows to this other pausing bar. And look, if it does break out, now we are getting cycle tops on the daily and the weekly, also in the Russell. So I'm not expecting this right now, but if we pull back and then plow higher in the Russell, we have the 62.5 here, we have the 200, and we have a 12.5% harmonic extension. That would be very key. We are still trading in the big rollover zone on the Russell, so I would not be greedy to the upside. The VIX just flattening out near very key lows before we had the tariff tantrum. This is where with cycles getting to bottom, very oversold. Now I'm really starting to look for volatility setups. And those aren't like 1 or 2 week setups. Those are like at least a month out, if not slightly more. DAX, still, remember, we were overbought. We had divergences. We have cycles trying to roll over. And so far, we have a sideways correction with a rising rotation zone. So this is what I'm watching to see if we're... The only thing is we start closing below this about 23,004. I'll watch for a little bigger pullback. Otherwise, it's so far a sideways correction. The yields... Now, I know Trump yesterday was calling for Powell to cut again, but look, the yields on the 10-year, we're breaking out to the upside. We're trying to trade against 4.5 again. We didn't quite make it there to yesterday's high was 4.499. But that's going to be significant, especially if it closes above 4.5, which it has not done until we started to sell off in mid-February. So that would be pretty substantial. Also, hold on. I cannot type. If we just call this up the 30-year yield, I should look at the other one. Hold on. I should look at the where is that? There it is. US 10, the US 30. That's the TVC, the Toronto Stock Exchange. It's got a cleaner chart. But look at this. Here's your 30-year bond yields. So your longer end of the curve, the 10, 15, 20s, 30s are all climbing. All right? This would not be a great environment to really start drastically lowering short-term rates. I'm watching to see if this breaks out above 5%. We're trading 4.945 right now, but this is in a very key area. If it were to break out, we're now in triple top territory. I mean, could it run to the 5.1 highs of October of 23? Gonna be watching that. That's going to get interesting in the bond market. Dollar index pulling back to the prior neckline breakout. Not surprising with cycles trying to roll over. I'll be looking for potentially if this sets up, what kind of bar this sets up if we break tomorrow above today's high. All right, we hit the 50 EMA. We hit the second target. Remember, we poked into the rotation zone, so I'm definitely not surprised to see at least a pause. The only thing I'm looking for tomorrow is if we break above today's high. Other than that, if we break below today's low, tomorrow I'll be watching for the bigger pullback and potentially putting in an even stronger weekly bottoming pattern. Hello, Christoph. Mike, do you usually buy puts or put spreads when using options to play short setup? It all depends on the volatility. I prefer spreads. Now, if we have high volatility, if we are in a high volatility option, then I'll definitely do put spreads because it offsets some of the volatility, or I'll sell calls to try to capture a drop in volatility. So you not only, if the market pauses or drops, then you selling calls. I really like that in high volatility environments. Because if the market, let's say it doesn't drop much, but it just pauses, you'll get the volatility coming in and you can still capture the gains that way. In low volatility, sometimes I will just do naked puts. Because You know, especially some key at the money, if it's very low volatility, if I think volatility is be underpriced, I will not necessarily spread it off. But I generally more often than not do spreads to the downside. Okay. Crude. Keeping an eye on, where is it? Keeping an eye on his here. You can see it right here. We do have a potential double top pattern. We have the EIA numbers coming out. Again, this may not trigger. But if we trade above 64.10, it's off the table. That's the only thing I'm watching right now for the bigger pullback trade in crude. But look where we might get the first cross the rotation zone. So that is key support right at the trigger point. Now we are at cycle tops. That's why I'm keeping a close eye going into the EIA numbers at that. Other than that, we've ticked off that 87.5 rule as of yesterday, forming that double top, and we're against very key resistance. If we do break to the upside, then I'll be watching closer to the major breakdown zone, which is roughly between 65.25 and 66. Gold. Here you go. You can see it clear. Here, let me take this off. There's the double top pattern into the weekly rotation zone. The targets, I'm paying very close attention if this does trigger to this 3060 area. First key target. To about 3037. Why 3037? Because if this can manage, you can see here on the run up, take off some of these other things now that we've broken below that. You can see here, we're below the 50% harmonic. I'm talking these, let me clean this chart up. Let me clean this up a little. There we go. So you see we had the run up. We already closed below the 50% harmonic, bounced back up. Now we're back below the 50% harmonic, coming into the 62.5 area. Especially if we trigger this and close below the 62.5, then that not only we have the double pattern, we have the 87.5 rule. So we can easily see prices come down here. Now, we are getting to daily cycle lows and still headed down on weekly. So I would actually be watching if this does trigger against the 50 also for potential bounce play to get better reward to risk if you were going to play this. If you're only looking for long setups, I'd then be patient and sit on my hands closer to where the targets would be. Because remember, on gold, and I'm not this, we could easily see this pullback. Look where 2970 is even. Let's say it continued to pull back. That's the monthly rotation zone. Look what happened when we approached the monthly rotation zone last time, another move up. Look how overextended this is, and we have divergences up here. So this could easily, without destroying a long-term pattern yet, pull back more. Okay? So if you're looking for long entries, I'd be patient. On bounces, again, not telling you how to make sure you trade your setups, but on bounces, I'd be looking for further weakness in gold for the time being. Hope that makes sense. Charles never touches gold. Charles, not even to the long side? Again, that's a preference. Some people don't like to trade certain things, which is fine. I think if you don't like to trade certain things, don't trade it. Don't trade something you don't like to trade. Yen, going to be watching, coming back into a little support area right here, a pretty key support area. We're trading right in that area now. You see that was a prior breakdown zone, retested, still the resistance held, and now I'm watching for this to hold as support on the shorter term areas. But we'll see because cycles are still headed down, but this is an area I'm watching for support. Euro, little bounce off the 50 and the second target. Still going to be watching for potential rollover plays in this. Spiders, coming right just shy of the next little minor harmonic area, which we're going to open just below today. Continued, still the magnet price is 596.80. On any pullback, I'm keeping an eye on the 1 hour rotation zone. It's the 1 hour rotation zone for the spires and the Qs, 586. Then if we drop down below that, I'm using these not the gap harmonics from the close, but this gap harmonics from the lows. And I'll be watching, the two levels I'll be watching is 583 and 581.50. Just little tip there if you want to play with something. If you want to, that's a little other technique I will use. Don't have new harmonic projections. They're still to the upside for the Qs, 523.51. Same thing here, keeping an eye on the 1 hour rotation zone and using the gap up harmonics from the lows. So on a bigger pullback, 509.40 roughly, and then 507.42. Going into the open, though, I'm watching the top of the daily rotation zone on the 1 hour basis. What else? The Bitcoin stalling out at the 87.5, pulling back to 75, and the harmonic right now, if we do power up above 105, then it's to retest the all-time high area, 109,500 roughly. 109, technically 109,358, but I'll watch for a slight poke above there. If it does break out above there, 113.7. What else do we have? We have NVIDIA. Still watching this with yesterday's close on any pullbacks. Still, we could easily see the 87.5 level again. The minor harmonic area I'm watching is right around 1. I'm splitting these harmonics. I'm watching around 136. Okay, but we still have triggered the 87.5 rule. Tesla, still watching for this to reconnect with the 50% harmonic. Okay. What else? Well, there you go, Charles. Trade the silver. Yeah, silver has been asleep. Again, with gold rolling over, if you want to look at silver real quick. With gold rolling over, silver's been caught in a trading range now without anything. But I'm really watching. There's not a short in silver, but I'm watching if it does break below 32.45 to retest 31.50. But that's really tight with reward risk. Power up check. Planters peanuts. I mean, we still have, is this off the table yet? Again, this thing just keeps going. It's the double is off the table. The double is off the table. What is this trade now? This thing's trading insane. But it will keep going until it doesn't. It's why it's off the table, because 130.24 was the invalidation point. It had to trade above there. It just got to 130.60. So there is no, again, the daily rotation zone held. The percent beat buy followed through. And the next key level is 132.82 and then 140.23. We're in buy everything mode. Is crude a weekly or daily double bottom? The problem, it's technically a weekly, yes, because this is the move that started it. And if it trades, it needs to close above this on a weekly basis. The daily, I don't like as much because you have this huge hitch in the middle. And the huge hitch, that's why I need to follow through with the weekly close above that level. Because if you look here, the second and third targets on the daily exceed this move. On the weekly basis, you can see that's just a pausing point for the first target. So that's why I'm requiring this on mine. I didn't touch on this today in here, but now we are. I need a weekly close above the high of 64.87, not a daily close. And you still have the weekly rotation zone in the way. So that's why I would not be aggressively doing this on a daily close if it can't follow through with a weekly close. Does that make sense? And you see why these shifting between the time frames can help instruct you on which time frame you need the close on. Weekly close is more important than daily closes, and weekly close has the pattern that works. Daily close, the pattern is not completely valid because it's extended pullback, and then we had this drop that formed it on the daily. So that's where and I'm not just talking crude here, you learn to look between patterns. Like sometimes we see a 4-hour double bottom is invalidated, but the daily is still in place. So that's why I require not a 4-hour close, but it has to follow through with the daily close above that. Because the time frames, the higher up you go, the more significant the closing is. And remember, the close is the most important point of any bar, of any candlestick. You're welcome, Andrea. And that's true whatever market you're trading. So that's where you learn to analyze, shift between the time frames, and learn to say, okay, this time frame the pattern's still valid on. This it's not, so I need the follow through close on the higher time frame to trigger the setup. If you learn to do that, I'm sure it will improve your trading results because it's an extra filter to be put in place. All right, let's just peek at the open. Sorry to go on a little tangent there. Let's just peek at the open. Again, I can't have a strong downward bias. Again, even if we break the rotation zones, even when we pull back below the 4-hour rotations, 4-hour rotation zone, there's just not a lot of great short setups today. It's more pullback setups from my perspective. The tick, I mean, come on. That's slightly negative, but that's a slight negative to flat opening. Not much going on there. Again, there's not much in the news. There's not much in terms of earnings until Cisco after close, but that's not going to be market moving. Just looking back at the heat map, you got a couple of the mega caps. Other than that, not much. I forgot to look at Meta, which is closing in on the second target. Second against a very key breakdown area. I'd actually be looking to raise this is getting a little overextended, and I would not want to be caught tomorrow, depending on what comes out. So I'd be looking to raise stops on Meta. Sterling, sometimes I get too locked into the candlesticks. It can be helpful to look at the line charts. Sometimes it can be helpful to look at line charts, especially for closes. That's where line charts are. We haven't flipped back and forth, but the line chart, that's where it gets you focused on the most important thing of a day, the close. And it can help you spot patterns you sometimes might overlook with candlesticks. So that is an excellent point, Sterling. All right, with that, thank you everybody for tuning in. And I will see everyone tomorrow. Have a wonderful, wonderful trading day. Bye for now.